Hi everyone. So this video is going to be a sort of pseudo response video to hbomberguy, but also kind of springboard to allow me to talk more generally about misconceptions about freedom of speech. If you'd like to go check out hbomberguy's original video, it's his PewDiePie video. It's about 14 minutes long. I have it linked in the description. It's on screen right now. Feel free to check it out just to see what his ideas are before you see my response to it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I have full clips from that video in this video, fully in context, so you'll be able to understand his opinions entirely without watching his original video. Before I begin, however, I'd like to take a bit of time here to define a term which comes up frequently in these types of debates, and it comes up specifically a lot in this video, and that term is freedom of speech. Now, I'd like to point out here that the actual definition of this phrase is the legal right to express one's opinion freely. However, for the use in this video, I'll define two more interpretations of this. The first being the one that is generally used in online discussions and just discussions in general, I believe, and that is the right of an individual to express one's opinions freely. The third definition, I kind of colloquially call it the SJW definition, and I think that will become self-evident once we watch the video, and that is the right to express one's opinions without backlash or without facing backlash. Both of these will have a lot of play in this video. Please keep them in the back of your mind while viewing this. So this video starts off with a little skit. There's no legitimate points made here. It's just exaggerations and it's paraphrasing, and I find it to be very entertaining, though probably not for the reasons hbomberguy intended. The real video begins at around 6 minutes in, and to be fair, he acknowledges in the beginning of his video that this first skit is not meant to be taken seriously. It's really just for fun. He's sitting in the dark with sunglasses on, pretending to be PewDiePie. It's a joke.
I do think it's a little bit disingenuous for Felix to imply that the Wall Street Journal put Disney in a corner and forced them to sever ties with him. Disney are a, big company. They can make their own decisions in life, and they're also a little bit afraid of looking like anti-Semites because it's bad to do that. And also they have a history of maybe making a couple of mistakes on that front, and they kind of want to correct that.
Right, but that's not the issue here. That's just the result. The actual issue here is that the so-called evidence of anti-Semitism was very obviously tailored to push a narrative by the Wall Street Journal. As Felix goes on to talk about in his video, is how the Wall Street Journal article took all of his quotes out of context. Not all of his quotes, most of his quotes out of context. Regardless of your opinion on the matter, good, bad, funny, unfunny, the context matters here. As Felix said himself, they went to his sponsors and YouTube first before ever contacting him. There were even attempts to shut down his YouTube channel, to destroy his livelihood, essentially. The method by which the Wall Street Journal here went about this, it shows very clear, underhanded tactics to me, trying to undermine Felix. And the press should be held to a higher standard, and I don't think that's a controversial statement. I'm pretty sure everyone would agree with that, and they didn't live up to that in this case. And even beyond all of this, I don't even believe that either of the jokes are wrong or in poor taste, and I believe his intentions in the Death to All Jews and Hitler Did Nothing Wrong videos, they're pretty clear, and I'll explain at the end of this video what I think about them. For now, it's not important. His intentions were clear, and he got his point across, I think. And to take him out of context in the way they did, it's very disingenuous.
It's pretty clear from how the discussion is unfolding on YouTube that the real problem isn't some impending corporate monopoly. Sorry, there's a train. The actual monopoly is inherent in how the discussion is being had.
Alright, no one's saying that, though. I've watched this video multiple times. I've seen various videos from various YouTubers from various viewpoints on this subject, and not one has mentioned a corporate media takeover, except for hbomberguy. I don't know where he's getting this idea from. The actual issue at hand here, I mentioned this before in the video, and, I think it'd be self-evident from just looking at this from the outside, is that the Wall Street Journal took Felix's videos out of context in an attempted hit piece. Now, we can have a conversation on that, because maybe you might have a different opinion on that. I think it's pretty clear, and I have some facts to back it up, but, that's something we can have a conversation on. No one's ever mentioned anything about some corporate media monopoly being behind it. It's a ridiculous claim, and really what I think this is it's an attempt to move the goalpost, essentially. It's an attempt to steer the conversation away from something which you don't really have a lot of facts on to something which you can talk about. That is to say, you can't really prove that the Wall Street Journal's hit piece wasn't a hit piece, because it kind of was. But what you can talk about is, critiquing the conversation people are having about whether or not PewDiePie did stuff wrong, even though that's not the issue at hand.
For example, look at the treatment Jacksepticeye, another gaming YouTuber, is getting for daring to say that he thinks maybe Felix got some things wrong. Jack is a fan of Felix. The two have known each other for a very long time, he very clearly looks up to him, and he makes some fairly light criticism, but the internet is calling him a backstabber.
So, as I just mentioned, he's now changing the subject of this video from the Wall Street Journal taking Felix's videos out of context in their hit piece, which is the real issue here, to the discussion of whether Felix did anything wrong. Now, as for Jack, the internet's not calling him a backstabber, and I'll show that in a few moments. A few of Felix's fanboys are, for sure, but that's not important. It's a very small minority of people, and the majority of feedback on that video actually supports him. There's way more likes than dislikes on that video. And I mean, there's way more likes than dislikes on your video too, and there's very few negative comments that I could find. Your victimhood narrative doesn't match reality here, and unfortunately that's basically the basis of the entire argument you're going to be making in this video, and it's not real.
The most subscribed person on YouTube can't even be mildly criticised by someone who admits they look up to him, without them being accused of backstabbing him and a massive shouting match emerging between their respective fan bases.
I mean, yes, it is really too bad a few of Felix's fanboys can't see reason. That's never a good thing, obviously. And it's too bad they left some, comments on Jack's video being negative and not being constructive at all. But going back to the actual definition of freedom of speech, it's the right to say one's opinion freely. It's not the right to give one's opinion without backlash. And, saying you're a backstabber is backlash. Even if it's not constructive in any way, they're still within their rights to say it.
And from what I can gather, that's the real problem here. Comedy on YouTube, as well as most forms of discussion, can't really develop beyond a fairly juvenile stage because it's impossible to provide a nuanced critique without being regarded as a threat. Supposed attempts to defend freedom of speech have ended up being defences of the most popular person's speech from other people's speech because they're using it to criticise them. In place of fighting for some actual freedom or some genuine discussion, people are basically arguing for a pseudo-populism in which the most subscribed person has to be right because he has the most.
Alright, so HB has said his piece. He's down off his soapbox now. Now, do you really want to see what all this fuss is about? All this, hysteria about Jacksepticeye getting flamed to hell and back with backstabber and all this hate speech. Well, I trolled through the first 10 pages of comments on Jack's video, and this is what I found. So I looked for a few keywords to identify quote-unquote hate speech in this case. The first keyword I looked for was more sub. Looking for, someone saying, oh, he has more subscribers, shut up. That's, pseudo-populism argument. And I found this one comment out of 10 pages of comments. One comment. And he said, don't criticize him because he has more subscribers than you. Basically exactly what HB said. Everyone was saying with the pseudo-populism argument. One comment out of 10 pages. I want to keep this, I want to really drill that home here. However, he did have 54 likes. So let's count that as 55 opinions, basically. So 55 out of 53 million think this, assuming all of PewDiePie's fanboys, or not even fanboys, subscribers went to watch Jack's video. Now, the next keyword I looked for was backstab, to see how many people really called him backstabber. And out of 10 pages of comments, how many comments do you think? How many hits do you think I got? Well, I got 18 hits. So 18 hits out of 10 pages, but it wasn't actually 18 comments. It was only 12. Some people mentioned backstab more than once. So 12 comments out of 10 pages. Now, how many of those comments do you think were negative, and how many do you think were positive? I'll give you a hint. It's probably not what you would think if you were to watch HB's video. There were 4 negative comments out of 12. That's 33% of the comments that mentioned backstab were negative. Now, what do these comments say? Well, there was nothing constructive about it. It just said, don't criticize him, you're a backstabber. Now, how many likes did these comments have? Obviously a lot, because this is such a, epidemic. Well, no, they all had 1 like, except for one comment which had 2 likes. So 4 comments, 5 likes, that's 9 opinions, let's say. So what about these other 8 comments? Like, what did they have to say? Well, they fell into either, they've one of 2 categories here. And the first being someone who agrees with Jack, and they say don't call him a backstabber because he has a different opinion. And the other category being, I support Felix, but don't call Jack a backstabber because he has a different opinion. It's very simple. Now, how many likes did these comments have? Probably not a lot, because calling Jack a backstabber is a real big problem. Well, no, collectively, all these comments had about 597 likes. So, if you're going to add those up, that's 605 opinions in favor of Jack. So, honestly and truly, when you look at all of this, the actual objective reality of it, you have 55 opinions of a guy saying don't criticize him because he has more subscribers, and you have 9 opinions of people calling him a backstabber. So let's say that's 64 negative opinions, and you have 605 positive opinions, and those positive opinions, by the way, are just from the backstabber comment. They're not even all the replies on that populism argument. So 605 versus 64. And I mean, just keep this in the proper scope. This is just 10 pages of comments. I found 1 saying populism and 4 saying backstabber. So 64 negative opinions out of 53 million PewDiePie subscribers. Just keep that in your mind when you watch the rest of this video, and even look back in your mind of what HB said before this and how it is now just completely bullshit. To say that the worldview here is skewed is just a massive understatement. Now, as for your populism argument, which, I mean, I just demonstrated is not true, there's no evidence for it, but, I mean, it's interesting, so I'll still respond to it. Just perhaps you should consider that they're arguing Felix is right because he is right. That's a possibility in this situation. The possibility that people are defending Felix because he is legitimately in the right in this situation. And this is an idea you don't consider possible because I don't know. You acknowledge that what Felix said is a joke, and therefore he should have the right to say it, which would lead me to believe that you think he's in the wrong because you personally don't find it funny, or you find like the content objectionable, even though it is a joke and he didn't mean it. The problem is you never actually discuss this. Instead, you just build up a false worldview. You build up some victimhood narrative here. And instead of having a conversation about what PewDiePie said, or even, the Wall Street Journal article, whether or not it was even truthful, you just criticize the way the conversation is being had. But even beyond that, you criticize the way you think the conversation is being had, which is really the crux of this. You made up a straw man about what you think is happening, and then you burnt it. But it's not actually happening. It's look out your window. It's not real. And honestly, this would be such a good topic if not for the fact that it's just blatantly false, and that's kind of what frustrates me about this.
In the words of Keemstar, and I actually wrote this down when I saw it because it was ridiculous, if we decided as a community that PewDiePie was wrong, then he would have 1 million dislikes, not 1 million likes. He then goes on to say, we have already decided that PewDiePie has done nothing wrong, that he is innocent. Already decided he's innocent. Because of likes.
Right, okay, Killer Keemstar's quote. So, I mean, I've just proven that there is no conspiracy against Jack. There's no massive attack against him. So really, you're kind of just left here sitting with egg on your face, insisting that. Now, there's no massive attack against, dissenting opinions of Felix because of some YouTube populism. Real life proves that otherwise. So really, what's happening is DJ Keem is just insisting you compliment the Emperor's clothes, and you willingly do it with no critical thought. Now, this is what people mean when they say SJWs have an echo chamber, and I'm not accusing you of being an SJW, but this is the mentality. Basically, flip Keem's quote around. Like, you've already decided that he's guilty. Why? Because he's the most popular YouTuber. And, you know, people who you disagree with politically, namely Sargon, have come out in support of him. So seeing that, now you think that PewDiePie Felix is wrong no matter what. You fail to even consider the fact that he might be right. At no point in this video do you ever consider that he might be right. He's always just wrong. He's wrong from the outset. There's no discussion on it.
I certainly hope it goes without saying at this point that the idea that a person can't be wrong because a lot of people clicked a like button on their favourite gaming YouTuber is a really bad idea for speech and discussion.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, the idea that someone might be right because they have a lot of dislikes or hate is also equally idiotic. I'm not sure what your insinuation is here.
Freedom of speech is a very important thing, and it should be defended from people who seek to limit it. For example, actual literal fascists.
Yeah, I agree, but who is limiting free speech in this case? No one's been curtailed in their ability to say what they want. No one's been silenced in any way. Now, you have fanboys on both sides who are blindly arguing who's in the right, and you have reasoned people on both sides who are arguing the same. The only difference in these conversations is the method by which they're arguing, or the words they use, basically. Everyone's saying what they want without any inhibition. So, unless you consider leaving dissenting comments on a video about having a dissenting opinion and inhibition to free speech, I don't know what to say. We're on like the seventh circle of ironic hell here, basically. These people who, you know, all four of these hideous people who are saying backstabber, they're not saying anything constructive. They're just saying, don't criticize him. You're a backstabber, basically. Now, why should we, you know, institute some kind of system that prevents them from saying that? Because that's what I get from your argument here. I mean, if that's not your argument, if your argument is, you know, maybe we as a people need to treat these, need to, you know, police these kind of thoughts. Well, I mean, that's already happening. There are eight comments saying don't call him a backstabber. There are literally twice as many people saying don't call him a backstabber than there are people calling him a backstabber. So we don't need an institution to say this to prevent these people from saying pointless stuff, because that would limit free speech. We can promote people to, you know, self-police themselves, but that's already happening.
But who in this equation needs defending the most? The guy with the most subscribers and the farthest reach on the fucking platform? Or the smaller people who actually dare to criticize him and are being treated like dog shit for it?
Neither. No, really. The answer here is neither. And this part of the video is really where I reach my peak of frustration. Because this is why I don't believe that you actually know what free speech is. And this is why I defined two different meanings of it. See, it's not safety from other opinions. It's not safety from hurtful words. It's being exposed to the full, unbridled ideas of everyone else. And sometimes those ideas are literally just backstabber. Sometimes it's literally just an ad hominem attack. Now, arguing that smaller YouTubers need defending because they're smaller is just the flip side of saying the big YouTuber needs defending because they're bigger. So basically what you're saying, a pseudo-populism is bad, but a pseudo-anti-populism is good. I mean, it's impeccable logic, really, it's impeccable. Perhaps we shouldn't blindly defend one side because of their subscriber count. I mean, that's something HB believed in before he countered his own point, like a literal 50 seconds later in his video. Maybe the person who has facts on their side should be defended because they're in the right. Maybe people will have, you know, different facts. That is to say, they'll have, like, you know, they'll be missing facts from their worldview, and people can fill that in. Maybe they'll have different opinions. Maybe people can talk about, you know, who's in the right. Maybe they can discuss it and talk with each other. And I think you'll find that in this, you know, utopia I just described, that is exactly the system we have now. That is exactly what's happening now. You have a bunch of bozos who come in and just say backstabber, but we ignore them. And actually, more than ignore them, we tell them to go away. It's already happening, you know. The people who call them a backstabber are outnumbered 2-1 with people saying don't call him a backstabber because it's not constructive. This is already happening.
Somehow I think this video with a bunch of dumb jokes in it, and a couple of bits of light criticism where Jacksepticeye says he thinks Felix got some things wrong, are somehow more revolting than a video of someone paying people to hold up a sign saying death to all Jews. Doesn't something seem wrong about that?
Yeah, really, something does seem wrong here. To whom is it revolting? See, multiple newspapers, and even J.K. Rowling of all people, claimed Felix was a fascist, a Nazi sympathizer, or someone who was appealing to Nazis after his video, or specifically after the Wall Street Journal article on his videos. And this resulted in him taking down his videos and issuing an apology. Now, Jack got a few dislikes on his video, still mostly positive, but, you know, a hefty amount of dislikes, is around like 22% or something. And he got a few dissenting comments, you know, like 5 nasty comments. Now, this isn't the Oppression Olympics here, but it's important to keep these things in the correct scope. And when your worldview is skewed through the lens of, you know, victimhood, you can't do that. HB can't do that because it doesn't conform to his worldview. And it's unfortunate. Please just think about this. I believe, and I truly believe this, the idea that Felix could be considered an anti-Semite, a fascist, or even a Nazi is more revolting than the actual jokes that Felix made. Because I can understand that context matters, and I cannot support misinformation. Now, this is the reason why people are supporting Felix. And this is the reason why people are criticizing Jack. And it's through minor fault of Jack. He didn't have all the facts when he made that video. He admitted as much, and people are correcting him on it. Some people are just calling him a backstabber, as I've said, but that's freedom of speech for you. Now, you can remove context and tone, and you can distill it down to a man paid 2 people to make a sign saying death to all Jews. But by doing that, you are literally embodying the issue everyone had with the original Wall Street Journal article. Hopefully you can understand that.
Just in case it wasn't obvious, no, I don't think Felix is actually a Nazi. Which, admittedly, is a pretty low bar. But then again, I have quite a lot of experience with Swedish fascists, so maybe I just know what they look like. I didn't think the Wall Street Journal thought he was either, though. I read their article. They just pointed out that he relies on one joke too often, and that's because when people criticize him for overusing jokes or relying on sloppy joke editing as a crutch, people jump down the throat and call them a backstabber.
What do you mean they point out his reliance on one joke? They specifically targeted his use of Nazi imagery in jokes. It, you know, wasn't his use of jump cuts or stuttering delivery or Ainsley Harriott or some other trope he uses way more often to get laughs. Again, you're distilling the point down and just removing all context, and it just makes you completely miss the point. Their deliberate targeting of Nazi imagery, even down to the degree where they took some of his clips out of context entirely to fit their narrative, it shows deliberate and underhanded methods employed by the Wall Street Journal to attack Felix. For further proof, just look at the timestamps on the videos they used. Here's a full list now up on the screen. So there are 9 videos spread out over 7 months, albeit 4 of them are in January, so there's a cluster there. Now, these videos, they're spread out over 182 days from start to finish date. He uploads like around a video a day on average, so that's 5% of these videos uploaded since they began, which have Nazi imagery in it. So it's pretty clear from this that they went for the heavy hitter, because their aim was to inflict damage. They don't care about his overuse of any other comedic trope. If you did the exact same calculation, the exact same date range, his use of Ainsley Harriott or his use of snap zooms or like changing the color or stuttering delivery, literally any other comedic trope, it would be so much higher than 5%. The Wall Street Journal doesn't care about his use of comedic tropes. It's Nazi imagery they were after because it was specifically an attack piece.
The structure of YouTube doesn't just hurt people who happen to not be as popular as PewDiePie and have different opinions. It also is bad for PewDiePie, because his comedy can't evolve because people can't criticize him without being called backstabbers, so they don't bother.
And yeah, unfortunately, Jack thinks Felix's overall use of the death to all Jews joke could have been set up better. And, you know, he'll have to find a way to sleep at night knowing there are 5 PewDiePie fanboys who don't like him. I don't want to be facetious, but it's such a non-issue. I can't help but point it out every time. Just consider that no one actually complained about that video until the Wall Street Journal piece against Felix. I mean, have you considered his fan base is fine with that level of humor? Why do they need to evolve? Like, why does he need to evolve? I don't think you understand. Not everyone has as much as a refined comedic taste as you do.
Fucking terrible, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it?
Don't forget to subscribe. There is a supply and demand here from creator to viewer, and this is true across all YouTube channels, but specifically PewDiePie. If the majority of his fans like the product, then the minority of the fans really can't, and I would argue they shouldn't, have an influence over the creator's actions. They should have the freedom to say it, and they do, but free speech is not freedom from backlash, and they will get backlash, and nor is it forcing someone to listen. And I mean, realistically, Felix would probably never read the comment. I mean, and even if he was forced to, he's not even obliged to even consider what the comment proposed. These people are in the minority, so it wouldn't be in his interest to go against what the majority wants. It's just basic supply and demand in this case. And these things, preventing backlash and forcing people to read and listen to what people say, those things are not freedom of speech.
Unless we actually raise the discourse by treating everyone in the equation better, especially the people who criticize PewDiePie and have less of an audience, then we're going to keep encountering this same problem over and over again because nothing will actually change.
Right, okay, but what's your point here? What's your point in the video? This is the last clip from the video, by the way. Now, I agree we should treat everyone better. No one's going to disagree with that. It's an incredibly vague and positive statement. But what type of criticism are you talking about? There are people in Jack's video saying backstabber. That's criticism. It's not constructive in any way, as I said previously, but it's still criticism. Are we going to censor that? I mean, Jack's video was received positively, and it was critical of him. So criticism is not viewed negatively. I don't want to strawman you here, but you said nothing with this video. I don't understand what your entire argument is. I guess, just to reiterate, freedom of speech does not entail freedom from backlash. And that's what we have now. We have freedom of speech now. You can say whatever you want, but people are going to disagree. And sometimes they're going to be polite, sometimes they're not going to be polite. Neither person should be censored. And neither person should be propped up based on an arbitrary number, such as subscriber count. Neither person should be defended and shielded from criticism. That's not what freedom of speech is. Alright, so that's it for HB's video. I'd like to share just a few final thoughts before I end this. I said multiple times in the video, and I truly believe this, but let me summarize it here. We already have freedom of speech on YouTube. I believe it to be the default state of the website. Now, I want to avoid strawman, but I'll take this video as an example, since I know this is a common SJW talking point. Please correct me, HB, if this was not what your video was about. So what HB seems to be arguing for in this video is protected speech, which, as you can imagine, is the antithesis of free speech. It also, in fact, exists on this platform already, although it's not mandatory to use. Now, these exist in the form of, channels being able to ban certain users, words, or phrases, as well as users being able to flag comments or videos. So these two forms of protected speech exist to protect the channel and the user, respectively. Both have valid use and invalid use, and they're kind of a necessary evil in the anarchy that the internet can be sometimes. Both of these things, in essence, are inhibitions to free speech when they're used incorrectly. They can be used to censor dissenting opinions when there's nothing wrong with that opinion itself, just the fact that it doesn't conform to what you believe. Now, these features don't have to be used. In an ideal world, you never have to ban anyone. But in real life, it becomes a necessity at some point. And of course, I like to mention, the limits of this are actually if the person's going against community guidelines. But that's similar to how in real life, freedom of speech ends when you incite violence, basically. It's the same thing on YouTube. So why I see people arguing against this so much, this idea of protected speech that SJWs like to talk about all the time, is because you're essentially forcing those non-essential protected features onto more than just what goes against guidelines. So now it involves using these features on what goes against the guidelines as well as what a certain small minority group finds to be taboo or immoral. Now, making something taboo to discuss is how you stunt knowledge or growth in that subject. This is something HB admits himself in the video when he says that if PewDiePie isn't criticized, he can't grow his comedic talents. Essentially, if you aren't criticized, you can't grow as a person. And that is, I believe, self-evident. I think that would be clear to anyone who's ever been criticized in their life and thought about their actions and grown as a person, or realized maybe that the person was just nitpicking for no reason. Now, I don't doubt HB when he says he believes this. I trust him. I believe he believes this. But the issue is just the facts of the situation don't align with his worldview. His worldview is skewed. Real life doesn't conform to it, essentially. His worldview doesn't conform to real life. So it kind of prevents him from being able to realize this. And I just don't think he considered it from this perspective. Lastly, I'll just say my piece on this whole PewDiePie Felix situation. And what I feel like this video could have been about. I'm glad it was about, freedom of speech issues instead, because I think this sets this video apart from other videos on the subject. So basically, in my opinion, in the very basic sense of the term free speech, the people who are arguing Felix shouldn't make these jokes are the ones who are attempting to inhibit it. And let me attempt to prove this by just explaining Felix's joke. And I had to apologize in advance because explaining a joke is how you make it unfunny. But we all know anti-Semitism is bad. And we all know having these opinions is morally wrong. Humor comes from a subversion of expectations. And in this situation, it's that someone is willing to break that taboo for only $5. So by choosing the phrase, "death to all Jews," and Hitler did nothing wrong, he showed that people on Fiverr really would do anything for $5. Even the most taboo thing, they would be willing to break. So this joke and this type of reaction, it's something you couldn't get with really any other phrase. I can't think of how you get that reaction with any other phrase. You can get similar reactions, but less, basically. So whether you find the joke funny or not, it's irrelevant because it's still a joke. It follows this basic guideline, subversion of expectations. And, I mean, consider this, too. The only type of people who don't think anti-Semitism is bad, that is to say actual anti-Semites, Nazis even, they're going to feel dejected when their ideology is ridiculed by everyone else because they're the butt of the joke, essentially. The joke is anti-Semitism is bad, so I don't see how an anti-Semite could watch this and laugh at it. I mean, if you listen to a joke and you take it seriously, that's on you. It's not the person who told the joke's fault that you can't understand humor. I mean, this is something the Wall Street Journal glossed over in their piece, that anti-Semites are the butt of this joke. And I mean, this is what caused other publications to escalate it even further and say he was inciting anti-Semites. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion. Alright, thanks everyone for watching my first video. Hopefully you made it to the end here. Please, please, please let me know how I can improve and, if I did anything right. I appreciate all criticism. I'm really trying to get better at this. I have another channel where I do a different style of video, no talking, so I'm not really used to this. I've gotten pretty sloppy at it. As you can tell, I say a lot. I tried to cut it down in this video, but now I'm just going off the cuff, so I might say a lot now. Trying to cut that down. I appreciate any feedback anyone can provide, especially if you just call me a backstabber. That I give you bonus points if you do that. Yeah, let me know any topics you'd like to see me cover. I want to do more stuff that you guys want me to do. I have some ideas for future videos, but if you want to see my opinion on anything, let me know, and I might make a video on it. At least eventually, maybe not right away, but because these things take a while to make, even with my shitty editing. So you can subscribe for more content like this, such that it is. I'm always gonna improve, and I appreciate all criticism again. Yeah, one more final thing too. Check out hbomberguy's channel. He does some really good stuff, specifically his video game analysis. I disagree with pretty much 100% of his politics, but I subscribe to him for just the video game stuff. Specifically, the Fallout video he made is really spot on. I really like that. Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, say what you will about his politics, but he has some really great production quality. The effort he puts into his videos must be amazing. Yeah, check him out if you want, if you're into that video game type stuff. All right, thanks everyone. See ya.